Hi there, my name is David Kenny. Welcome to Life from Above. Glad you could be with us today. We're interviewing graduates, potential candidates for graduation for the West Virginia School of Preaching, class of 2015. I'm very honored to have been asked to speak at their graduation. I thought I'd bring them in, interview them, give them a chance to deliver a lesson, and you can see and meet them, learn more about them, and hear a lesson from them. And today I have Shawn Traster with us. We're very glad that you could be with us on the program today, Shawn.
I'm honored to be here, and I'm glad I have the opportunity. A little nerve-wracking as it is, but
TV's a little different than some venues, but now you're from Vermilion.
No, I'm a suburb of Cleveland, about 30 minutes west of Cleveland. I live south Amherst, but Vermilion is my home congregation,
Okay.
and I've been going there for a long time. So almost back as far back as I can remember. I can't quite remember when we switched from Toledo Road Church of Christ to Vermilion, but we've been there pretty much, most of my life.
So you've known Mark Weaver.
Yeah.
For quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
We both know Mark. Mark's been on the show a couple times. He preached for Vermilion for several years, and I asked Mark to give me some words about you that I could share. And he said, Shawn is like a son to me. I am proud of his dedication and commitment to Christ. Although this is what I think of first, I also think of the following poem. And the poem he cites is If by Kipling, especially about the part about keeping your head, which reads, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, you will be a man, my son. So very good words, and Mark has expressed a lot of potential for you, a lot of great things. Of course, Mark is also a graduate of the West Virginia School of Preaching. So I imagine Mark probably had quite a bit of influence to get you to go to the school, maybe, possibly?
I don't know what kind of magic you pulled, but one day I was working full time and I was getting ready to go back to college. And the next thing I know, I was signed up for the School of Preaching, which was not even 3 months away. So it was kind of a blur. But it had been something that I had been thinking of for a while, preaching, and something that Mark had brought up, and I wasn't really big into public speaking at all, and it still kind of amazed me. I still kind of look back at it now and think, how in the world did I know about the West Virginia School of Preaching? But it was just I just talked with Mark one day, and I was telling him I was getting ready to go back to school, and I'd been working full time, and the next thing I know, we were talking about the West Virginia School of Preaching, and then boom, bam, there I was a couple months later. So it was interesting. It was definitely a blur, but there was some rhyme and reason to it. I like I mentioned, I've been working full time, and I had been a casual Christian for a while, and I was a Christian, but I wasn't studying, and I was just trying to live. I was more focused on surviving, what do I do after high school, and where am I going to live, stuff like that, and basically just survive and then die. So it wasn't a lot of foresight. I was comfortable. I was comfortable in an apartment and a house. I wasn't really too worried about the future, but I remember thinking. It was strange because when I was working one day in a job, and I was still in high school. I was thinking, am I a Christian? Am I really a Christian? And one of the things that one of our Bible school instructors had said to us, and it might have been Mark too, it said, if Christianity isn't affecting your life, then you're not a Christian, or at least you're not a faithful Christian. And I'd realized, and it was at that point I was kind of having this, I don't know, I guess you could say a spiritual struggle if you want to. I looked back at my life and I said, there's a lot of things I didn't do that I could have done that would have been really dumb. And I chose not to do it because of, my faith. So I figured, maybe I'm not as bad as I think I am. And from that point on, I started studying more. I had started all over the place. I didn't really know where to start. I wasn't following any kind of set plan. And the next thing I know, with study came, I guess, boldness. So then, I had a couple years after that, I had started becoming more vocal in the defense of my faith. And so I was, well, as I said, I was more vocal. Problem was I wasn't very good at it. So I could basically I could bring up a argument that was okay. You know, well, how do we even know that the Bible is reliable? Well, I know that the Bible is written in Greek and that, blah, 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 fill in the blanks in a basic argument, but I couldn't take it past that. And I didn't think I could evangelize people. So, I didn't think I could convince anybody, and I wasn't good at speaking. It was hard for me to order my thoughts a lot back then to effectively communicate what it is that was in my mind. So I figured, I need some training. And then when I started talking with Mark about the West Virginia School of Preaching, it was like a perfect storm of I was studying more. I was wondering, how do I become? Really, I wasn't wondering. I was feeling bad because I wasn't able to effectively communicate a defense of my faith. And then I started talking to Mark about the school. So I was in a transitional period between working full-time, getting ready to go back to school, and I was like, well, why not? So next thing I know, I'm at the West Virginia School of Preaching. But it's still kind of amazing me, like, how did I get here? So it was interesting.
Well, I know you and I have talked several times. Obviously, we've seen each other over the course of events at Lorraine or Vermilion or at the school and all that. And I've always had a very good feeling about you. You're always very congenial. You're always very friendly. You have a good sense of humor. You relate very well with people. That's you have a natural rapport with people, which is very important to be a preacher. Preachers, the position of preacher is not just pulpit delivery, but it's also relating to people, and you have that part good. So you go to the West Virginia School of Preaching to basically get the tools to do what you want to do, which is to impact people for Christ. What was your experience, or as far as training that you received that helped you do that? How much did the school help you? It's got a lot going on there.
Oh man, you asked that, and my mind immediately goes to my first sermon I ever preached because I had no preaching experience prior to the school whatsoever. People had tried to get me to do it, and listen, I'm a song leader. I feel like that's good enough. I don't want to get up in front of people any more than that. But I remember my first chapel sermon, and it was terrible. And I knew it was terrible. And I still know it's terrible. Sometimes people beat themselves up a lot. The saying goes, you're your own worst critic. But even looking back at it now, that was really bad. So I don't want to toot my own horn, I guess, if I use that proverbial saying. But where I've come from, I think, from where I started to where I am now, is sometimes I don't feel like the same person. And I don't mean to be arrogant. I'm not trying to say that at all. But I think about the guy that I was and the speaker that I was, the speaker that I was now. And I'm not saying that I'm even a good speaker, but what I am saying is maturity-wise, I think I've grown a lot. And I've been told by Andy and some other peers that, you come a long way since you first started. And normally I don't accept praise very well, things like that, so I kind of normally reject it out of hand. But even I kind of thought, there's a monochrome of truth to that, because at least I can get up there and put a thought together, and try to communicate that.
So it's definitely helped you.
It's made all the difference. So
anybody, somebody's out there thinking, because different students come from different reasons. Excuse me, and they they go to school and from different backgrounds and all that. But you're telling me basically, you're saying, I don't have any background to do that, but you go there and you are able to go basically from scratch to do that, and that had to be a big curve, a big learning curve for you.
Yeah. I've always hated public speaking. I've always been really shy, and it was kind of strange when I was a kid. I was not exactly a social butterfly, but it kind of happened around the time that we moved to Firelands. I started going to the school system there. By the time I was a junior, I found my real friends, and I had a lot of friends, and they were a good group of guys. And my encouragement, I mean, um, my the word escapes me, but basically my what's a word when you're not afraid to speak in public?
Courage.
Well, my courage, but my self-esteem. There you go. I don't know why. Probably because of the cameras. But anyways, my self-esteem really kind of shot to the next level. And then, I'd always been nervous about everything. The way I look, the way I talk, and I had a speech impediment and things like that. And once I found my real friends, and I found that a real common bond with them, as they continued to be true friends to me, I kind of grew in confidence, and the next thing I knew, I wasn't the same kind of guy that I was before. I wasn't as shy, and it just kind of increased from there, and it was a good thing, and it helped me to be able to talk to people later on in life, even though it wasn't very effective, to voice my cause for Christ, or my case for Christ and my faith. And that was a big part of it. But also, it gave me the confidence that, again, I mentioned earlier, I was at work one day thinking, am I a real Christian? And I thought, I am, at least to some degree, because I do allow my faith to influence my life. And from there, it kind of just, blossomed out. I started studying more, and then I started arguing with people more. And of course, you can ask my fellow students, arguing with people. It's one of my favorite pastimes. So, especially now, I'm still a little nervous. Speaking to certain people, I still get the butterflies, in my gut, and my voice kind of starts to crack. But the difference now, though, is I still continue on. I don't back down. So that's, to me, is important, and I'm able to, with the knowledge that I've been armed with up to this point, I've been able to overcome a lot of the problems that I used to have when I didn't have, said knowledge.
Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being nervous. To me, it always tells people, this guy really wants to talk. He really believes in what he's doing, to the point that he's even willing to go and do something he's uncomfortable to do because he believes in what he's doing. So even though that kind of dynamic tells people, when they know, especially when they know you, that person's nervous and they're willing to do it anyway. A lot of people, they wouldn't even do it. They would say, look, I've even been on interviews or places to preach, and I've even had people say, oh, there's nothing to this preaching business. At an interview, someone told me that one time, and they were just going on, all you need is a couple sermon outline books. There's nothing to preaching. And, whether this guy ever preached a day in his life, I have no idea. But, some people have that attitude. They don't think there's anything to it. And to which I just responded, if it's so easy, why don't you do it? I mean, if it's that easy. But it's not that easy. I mean, standing in front of a group of people, it may come naturally to some, or it may look like it comes naturally to some. But it's very stressful. And so standing in front of people, not having anything to say, or not having your thoughts collected the way you want, could be very, very disorganizing and unsettling when you do that kind of thing. So you mentioned your studies. Obviously, you talked about you were studying, and you have all these different subjects coming up. I imagine you learned or were exposed to a lot of things at the School of Preaching. Did any of that catch you off guard? Did any of it surprise you as far as maybe the depth of the material or the breadth of the material? Was there any subjects that you found really challenging, that really motivated you, that you appreciated?
That's an interesting question, and how much time do we have? Because really, to answer that, you have to go back kind of farther into my childhood. Mark Weaver did an excellent job, basically raising me in the faith, being my father in the faith that Paul talks about, is the father in the faith to Timothy. Because you're talking about preachers, and it's not just the pulpit job. Mark Weaver, affected me the most, not from the pulpit, but from interaction and communication with him outside of the pulpit. And a lot of the things he taught me stuck with me, and he's a very faithful man. He's very knowledgeable. And so I was kind of armed, so any of the knowledge that I did have didn't really come from studying. It came from, well, interaction with the Mark, and then obviously from his sermons. And then I started studying for myself. And so, and then from there, I went to school, and I have been challenged by some things because I realize that some things I've been taught, don't necessarily jive with truth sometimes. Not that Mark taught me any false doctrine, that's not what I'm saying, but, when you're raised, this is how something is, and then you kind of research it yourself and you realize, oh, maybe that's not quite. Perhaps maybe my Bible class teacher was wrong about this. You start studying things for yourself. You start realizing, I have to look at this. I have to look at this with a clear mind. One of the things I've struggled with in my life, or shouldn't say struggled, what I've set out to do is to try to be to look at things from a fair standpoint, because as Christians, we're always called closed-minded, and that's how we were thought of in school. But then it's interesting that people say that, because if you disagree with them, you're closed-minded, but then if they don't agree with you, well, then what are they? So I tried to see from their side of the argument, and okay, I see where you're coming from, but I know that you're still wrong because the Bible says this. So anyway, so I said all that to say this. So when I got to school, there's some things I had to go through that, we never really covered that, or, that's a little different than the way I understood it when I was growing up. And it has challenged me. For instance, the Life of Christ class that we had with Aaron Birch, when we had to harmonize the Gospels, that for me was kind of a struggle, because there are alleged passages of Scripture that don't quite line up, like the demoniacs of the Gadarenes. Or is it Gadarenes or the Gerasenes? What's going on there? And it was kind of a struggle for me, because one of the things I appreciate the most about the schools is their honesty as Christians. It's our job to be honest. And so they present you with challenging problems. They're not just going to spoon feed you false doctrine or just their opinion, but they're going to present to you as accurate as they can the truth. And they do their best that they can, because they're honest men, they're honest teachers. And so they present you with some problems. They say, okay, here's this problem, figure it out. And I was given the demoniacs of the Gadarenes. I'm sitting there thinking, how does this work out? This doesn't really make any sense to me. And I had done some study on it, and I kind of came to the conclusion, you know what? This does make sense. I know how to harmonize this, and I won't go into it because I don't think we have a whole lot of time. But it was a struggle for me, and it kind of, I don't want to say shook my faith, but it definitely was a problem that needed to be surmounted. But I was able to do that because perhaps unlike some who would have said, all right, that's it, I give up. Obviously, God's not real. I stuck with it and studied it, and I was like, you know what? There's a reason why they don't say the same thing. And it was kind of like this is different perspectives from the different writers. And it's kind of like, if I go on a camping trip and I'm with my family and I get attacked by a bear, I might go home and tell the rest of my family, maybe the extended or cousins or something, yeah, I was with my family camping, I got attacked by a bear. It was crazy. And I might be with my buddies who are trying to impress a girl, yeah, I was out there camping and I got attacked by a bear. Well, I didn't mention my family in the second story. Well, that doesn't mean my family wasn't there. And that was the same kind of problems that we had in there. So I've really enjoyed the challenges presented to us in class, and I've enjoyed the learning from the teachers and their experiences and their knowledge, and then studying things out for myself and try to make sense of things. And it's been a joy, and sometimes it's really hard, but then you always come out the stronger for it when you stick with it and you don't just give up. Mm-hmm. So I think that's definitely.
There's a lot of class material that we use. Obviously, you only have so much time, to present a lesson. So a lot of times, the pre-formatted material, nothing wrong with pre-formatted material, but sometimes you're trying to teach a certain amount of information in a certain amount of time, And some things get misunderstood. Sometimes there's more detail there than a teacher is able to present. And you go through that for a whole curriculum or several years. I imagine going to the school, and then they really sort of drill into it a lot deeper. I imagine there were a lot of, oh wait, this is what I heard, but this is the way I took it, and it turns out, oh, you know what, the way I took it may not have been exactly what the material was trying to present to me. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot, it's a really good illustration, because a lot of people think that Christianity is just, it's just a cakewalk. I mean, it's just a bunch of little facts, and there's not a lot of detail but it's a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of great information that can enrich people in their study. I read that you spent some time, you mentioned Aaron Birch, also a graduate of the school. Mark Weaver's a graduate of the school. And I think I read somewhere that you spent an internship with Aaron. What was that like?
I actually did a double internship with Aaron and with the Lisbon congregation, and also with the name escapes me, but Bob Nolan was just preaching there.
Hanoverton?
Hanoverton. Mm-hmm. I was between Hanoverton and Lisbon, and I spent a lot of time with Lisbon, especially with Aaron. They were like my, I guess, primary internship, I guess you would say. And I learned a ton. Aaron's a brilliant man, and I just learned a lot. I mean, not just even from him, though, but also from watching what he does, the interaction between him and the members and the responsibilities that he had and what actual preaching life is like, trying to balance, he was doing school, raising a family, had another kid on the way, had 3 really rambunctious girls, and then preaching and taking care of the other responsibilities that the congregation had given him. I saw, what it was really like to preach. And people have no idea. People say, well, you only have to preach, as a preacher, it's easy. All you have to do is work, give like 3 sermons a week. It's like, you guys don't have a clue. Like, you have no idea the amount of work that has to go into your job. I mean, Aaron was so busy, he could barely have time for his family, it seemed. And I was thinking, wow, this is something I need to try to avoid. Not that the Lisbon congregation was bad, but just the overwhelming nature of what Aaron had to do. I have to try to find a better balance. I try to look at the mistakes and the things of others, not to say Aaron was making mistakes, but the problems presented to other people and see what they did and try to learn from that, and that's helped me a lot. And so it was an interesting experience. Not only that, but having to constantly prepare lessons and present them to the congregations and the 2 congregations. And sometimes members from the congregations, they go to the different building. The way the schedule is set up, so you could go to Lisbon, in the afternoon and then make it to Hanoverton services in the afternoon also. So you couldn't always preach the same lessons all the time. It'd get kind of stale. So I had a lot of experience in making lessons and presentation and everything that goes along with that, and I learned a lot from that. And I think it made a huge difference, even though it was such a short amount of time. That, and also I learned that if your congregation doesn't have elders, sometimes you become like the I guess like the go-to man. So I had people asking me like, "Hey, we got problems with the building. Do you want to go ahead and talk to these guys?" I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm 23.
I don't know anything.
Preaching school.
I surrender.
And you want me to handle this kind of stuff? Like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. And so that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of good experience. And so I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenging field, and a lot of work goes into preparation. Hopefully, you're looking forward to graduation and doing some more speaking. So it's really glad to have you be a part of the show, Shawn, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Before we close our program today, we'd like to take a moment and review this roadmap to heaven with you, since the matter is so serious. There are many incorrect set of directions out there, and sadly, so many people are following them. For example, some people have been given wrong turns. They believe things such as faith only, works only, or grace only. Or some attempt to change the order of the turns, being baptized before they even believe. Some people fail to realize what point they are on the map. Don't even open their Bibles yet, and they think they're saved already. As a person travels in a car or takes a hike, it has to follow the proper directions, so we must follow the proper directions to heaven. Let's take a look at the directions on our roadmap to heaven here. You have to look at these passages in your Bible for yourself. We'll just list the steps, the turns on the way. First is to believe or to have faith. And then number 2, to repent, to turn away from sin. Number 3 is to confess that Jesus is the Son of God. Number 4 is immersion, or to be baptized, which is a burial in water to have your sins washed away. And then you're added to the church by the Lord, not by a group of people, or not by giving some kind of testimonial experience or things like that. And then once you're added, you need to serve and worship the Lord faithfully all the days of your life. And the key word's faithfully. You don't waver. And that's very important. We need to keep in mind, too, that in Noah's day there was a big flood, and only people in the ark were saved from the flood. The same is true today. There is no salvation outside the Lord's church. Where are you on the roadmap to heaven? Thanks for watching our program. Please let us know if we can assist you with further information for your journey.